Your move, craft beer. Your move. Yes, Rascal and Disco beer review. Be Disco coming at you with another beer video. And once again, I'm out and about up here at Horsenden Farm. Let's have a look at Perivale Brewery. On the heels of last month's video in their prawn cocktail IPA, they asked what is the weirdest adjunct anyone's ever seen in a beer. And I referenced this one and showed you the adjunct. Nobody really guessed it, but it was the start of this beer. Japanese Knotweed Sour. Yes, actual knotweed, Japanese knotweed, that invasive species a lot of people have trouble with. Again, it's caused a bit of discussion and divisiveness up here because a lot of people think it's either poisonous or illegal because of the lot of trouble that people have with it being an invasive species in the UK. Well, I'm living proof that it's not poisonous. I can't show you right now, but cross over to past Disco on brew day. So yeah, Japanese knotweed. This picture looks somewhere between rhubarb coloured asparagus, maybe a bit of bamboo, and I'm told by people who know these things, completely edible. Not pleasant. A little bit chewy, really. That's not the best piece, but for me, there's kind of like a pickled gherkin film going on, crossed with celery. It's like the consistency of celery. Tastes a bit like pickle juice, pickled gherkin, but not like salty or anything. Just kind of slightly vinaigrette, kind of. Interesting. I'll make an interesting accompaniment to a salad. Don't try this at home. So, hopefully, that answers the poisonous. As for the illegality of it, obviously, a lot of people have trouble with Japanese knotweed in domestic situations. But this was sourced from a wild forage, I suppose, from a wild patch grown here on council land. So it was done in association with the park warden. No knotweed was disturbed in the making of this beer. You just take off the very tops of the young growth in this patch, and that's what's chopped up into the beer. What results is a 3.8% sour beer. On the nose, there's a slightly distinctive sour note. Personally, I still think it's kind of pickles or pickled gherkin, but there's also a nice citrus note coming off it as well, kind of lemony. A lot of people up here have sort of turned their nose up at the idea of it, but after being tried a sample, I've seen plenty of people walk away quite happily with a pint of it. And the reason for that, I think, is in the taste. Cheers. I often talk about refreshing beers, but this really is. There's a kind of lemon note, which I imagine comes off the Motueka hops, sparingly added to this beer because it's all about the flavour of the knotweed. As I said before, I think the knotweed has a kind of sour, kind of pickle sort of flavour, sort of pickled gherkin type of thing with a kind of celery crunch. As I say, in the beer, that only comes through slightly at the end. There's a little bit of salinity, a little bit of sour edge, not quite a gosher, but it's got a slight amount of salinity to it, and certainly amount of savouriness and that pickle kind of, sour pickle kind of edge. But for me, it's a good citrus lemon flavour that kind of comes over. It's kind of like those bitter lemon mixers used to have in like social clubs back in the day. So it's kind of like bitter lemon, cloudy lemonade with a little bit of lemon sherbet sparkle as well. And I've seen people who are traditional beer drinkers go back for pints of this. It's a really interesting, really engaging, refreshing, sessionable beer. It's just really nice. It's a beer here called Very Zesty, which is a lemon beer, which I've referenced but not actually quite around to fully reviewing. This sits kind of off the back of that with that lemon note. As I say, there's more savoury note to it. There's a bit of salinity coming through a little bit later. And that Japanese knotweed flavour of that kind of slight pickle note coming through. And there's also a kind of florality to it as well. It's kind of slightly floral taste in the background. It's a big mix of flavours in a really refreshing, very drinkable pint. And really great colour on it too. There's some excellent lacing all the way down the pint. It's great. It's not heavily bodied. It's not as voluptuous as some of the other beers. It's plenty juicy in that kind of lemon citrus kind of way. And yeah, it's not going to solve the Japanese knotweed problem because you can't use all it. You can't uproot Japanese knotweed. You can't propagate it. That's where the illegality comes from. And it's not something that probably would be a massively produced, commercially available beer because of those issues with collecting it and stuff. But it's the next one in the kind of Xperiment range that Perivale have started with that prawn cocktail beer. This is, and the oyster stout, and this is the next one. It's a very small batch. It's only a few kegs of it and a few bottles up here at the farm. But I love a strange beer. I love something odd in the adjunct. I would say this is probably one of the strangest adjuncts I've ever seen in a beer. After prawns, definitely. This is definitely one of the most unusual, one of the rarest. I did have a quick look and I could only see like 2 other vague references to breweries that had done it. Only Crate did one last year. Completely missed out on that. And you can only really brew it at this time of year when the shoots are young and the most juicy and useful. It goes a bit woody after that apparently, so you won't see it all the time. Maybe next year, give it another go. Maybe if the council haven't eradicated that patch, but it's a really nice beer, despite how strange it sounds. Would you try it? And I'll ask again, what's the most unusual adjunct you've seen in a beer? Can you beat Japanese knotweed? Can't beat this pint, especially on a lovely, sunny, late spring, early summer day as we are today. Anyway, I've been Disco, Rasco and Disco Beer Review, and this has been Perivale Brewery's Japanese Knotweed Sour. Cheers, and enjoy the beers, whatever weird adjuncts you've got in them. Your move, craft beer. Your move.